Running there. Hey everybody, it is the 25th of January 2023, and this is Plutus PBL live coding, and we are starting from a blank canvas today to collect some ideas that emerged last week, and that could give us a really nice way to achieve two different goals. One is to start having a more formal process to defining a Gimbal Labs team, interests of people on that team, and two, to connect that to a more general version of the yes, I did this time. Processes are working. We're 2/3 of the way into the first month of the year, and the processes are really starting to work. But we want to combine this onboarding process with a streamlined version of GPTE. And so at a high level, what we're talking about here, there's kind of three components. Gimbal Labs team onboarding, which then leads to access to, we'll call this the general GPTE for now. Distinguished from the existing instance of GPTE, which is really about building the application itself and serving as a place where people, once they finish the PBL course, can start contributing to that specific project. The one we're talking about here is going to have more of the running Gimbal Labs administrative sort of thing, right? So you don't need to have completed Plutus PBL to be able to help out with some tasks in Discord management or meeting management or facilitation, or the list could go on, right? Anything that any of us could just start contributing to anytime. And then the general, right? General instance of GPTE, less dev focused. And finally, this is a chance to improve documentation. Specifically, and this is where there might be a bridge between these things. For anybody who missed it, hey Yuli, we got 5 completed projects at this point, and Yuli's got a contribution. Congratulations and thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I see you already committed to the next one, so this is fabulous.
I think it's a bit similar, so maybe.
Yeah, hopefully, and keep me posted, right? Remember, one of the goals here is for people just to learn this code base itself, right? So whatever questions come up, it looks like you're already innovating on the code base, though. So thanks. Here's the latest card. It's really easy to switch which card is being used under the hood. So as people can start to play around with this, we now have 3 options. And Yuli, you committed to number 18. Yeah, the project details component. That's awesome. But I think the work we're starting today also just connects to general documentation about the GPTE. So, somebody who wants to really focus on improving the documentation for GPTE in general, so that anybody can set up an instance, you can also commit to this project right here and lead that work. So there's that connection. So first and foremost, with this high level view of what we seek to accomplish with this kind of mini project here, anybody have clarifying questions about the outcomes of this work as I've outlined them?
The documentation, are we talking about documentation within GitLab?
Okay, that's another thing I've been thinking about a lot. Is Cold Ass here? He's not. So we have, obviously, there's dozens of options for posting documentation, and the documentation in GitLab is okay. I don't think it's really general purpose yet. There doesn't yet exist a simple walkthrough of, hey, here's the steps to initialize your own GPTE. So on the one hand, yeah, within GitLab, moving from kind of the technical docs that are there, here's how it works, to the very clear documentation, here's how you set it up, is part of that. The other part is we may identify, a documentation hosting platform that we want to use. I've been doing a little bit of research. I don't love Gitbook. ViewPress looks okay. Coldass suggested Doxify, which might work, or Docusaurus. There's a lot of options. So if anybody has a strong feeling that they'd like to run an experiment with taking the existing Markdown files and presenting them in a better way, that's one opportunity here. Yeah. Alex, what do you think?
This comes and goes, but I don't. So like, we have a lot of content on YouTube, and sometimes I see content on YouTube is indexed, and you can like search it, and live coding with Mix, for example, some topics that are like, are you planning anything like that? Like to organize that stuff?
Yeah. Actually, that's a great example of a task, I think, that would be listed here, right? So example of project posted on this instance. Like one example could be, what's the verb? Like indexing YouTube content, right? Or
Swarm guys know they do this on yeah, but they have the word for it.
yeah, like processing GL,
Something like this,
content, yeah. Right. But yeah, something like that's the kind of thing. Somebody might be really well suited to do that, and you don't need to go through PBL in order to help out with something like that. Hey.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful in order to figure out the best way to do documentation. I think stating what the and I think maybe in a point format, stating what the aspirational points ought to be, because one example that came to mind, which you've mentioned in the past but you didn't mention in the list that you listed out there, is Obsidian. I like knowledge management type offerings like Obsidian, because they tend to be open source. And again, going back to what I was saying about how I learn, and I assume that others do as well, is in visually showing relationships within a particular plane, right? The graph representation that Obsidian and others like it do, I really like that, right? Because you're able to see, oh, this thing has a relationship with this thing because there's a graph representation, right, with an edge or a line that connects it to. So I think perhaps a good way, yeah, to help the broader group of folks here think about listing options would be, hey, here the ideal list of characteristics which a solution would preferably have.
Excellent. Yeah. Define, so we want to define needs for documentation platform. I love Obsidian. I've tried a lot of different software for just keeping track of my own thinking, and I moved from Rome Research to Obsidian sometime last year, and I'll never change again. Just the fact of the output of the system is a folder full of Markdown docs. That alone is all the reason I need, right? And so much other software, you end up with a proprietary account on some database with all of your thinking, and it's really hard to export it out. For years, I used Evernote, and when I was done using it, it was really hard to get my notes out of there. So from a personal perspective, if you haven't explored Obsidian, I definitely recommend it. And it does make it really easy to publish directly from within the software. I can just select, hey, I only want to publish this directory right here. And it's really easy to do that. Does anybody on this call have experience collaborating on an Obsidian vault, you know, having multiple owners contributing to it?
Not on this call,
Yeah,
but
I'm sure there's people who do. Like, so I think
Yeah.
that could be, as we start thinking about, here, I'm going to use green for next steps. So one next step is look at options for shared Obsidian vault. It may be that this is all we need. And I've been doing experiments, publishing from my Obsidian just to share a little bit. The reason I've been open to thinking about other docs platforms is that I haven't yet reached the point where it feels really efficient. I haven't made a habit yet of publishing from Obsidian. And so I always watch for that in myself. And I'm like, I don't know what the blocker is. It might be that Obsidian is too open-ended and extensible that I get distracted by the possibilities. I'm not sure, but I'm definitely open to trying that as our documentation option and seeing how that goes. Alex, what do you think? Oh, sorry.
Sorry, yeah, just quickly. Yeah, not on this call, but Cherries has experience within like different
Cherries
vaults and
took
stuff,
us
so,
back to
yeah.
Rome yesterday when I met with him. So, you know,
no.
it's history just repeats itself. Here we are. Alex, what do you think?
So for Obsidian, what we do in the working groups is we manage our work in open repository on GitHub. And it's a very big surprise that GitHub uses MD files for this. So Obsidian has Git integration. So you can have Obsidian Vault, which is a Git repository, and it's pushed. The commits are pushed from Obsidian itself. So yeah.
Right. I've experimented with that too. So I have this like whole directory of markdown files in my Obsidian. And I've done a couple times is just taken one of those subfolders and initialized it as its own Git repository to push that up and just be able to share, you know, a subfolder. And that might be sufficient for this question right here. But I'm just wondering if there's anything built in that would make it even more efficient for us. So yeah, that's something to look at. But I think Markdown is fabulous. I trust that it will continue to exist as a standard. It's lightweight enough that if for some reason, markdown files were irrelevant, you would still be able to read the content pretty easily. So I'm excited to do as much as we can with Markdown, and especially when we talk about a learning management system, embedded Markdown files is one of my top priorities. I want us to be able to just take any existing documentation and embed it and make it look beautiful within a lesson or assignment context. Okay, so zipping back to the start of this process, let me jump over here. Oh, I'm not in the right browser. Give me 1 second. Shared an issue in the Gimbal Labs GitLab. Which I'm navigating to right now. I struggled to find that last week because it's. Do you have the direct link to that issue? I put it. Did I put it in Discord?
Let me try and find it.
Here it is. Yeah, it's in the Discord.
Okay.
Gimblers about me profiles. I think this is a great starting place for us. Drop this into the chat. I think this is a great starting place for us to be thinking about the onboarding part. And so just with this overview in mind, I, first of all, speaking of Markdown, actually bringing it back to Markdown, the Gimbal Labs website is already built to process directories of Markdown content. And there's a bunch of different content on the site that's built that way. So if we seek the outcome of having Gimblers fill in a templatized Markdown file and then submit it, that's a very efficient solution. So I just want to start by saying this is 100% possible. But let me hand it off to A so you can kind of elucidate on what you're thinking here. Or if you had a question.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to give a little bit of context behind my thinking, which has gradually evolved, I suppose, since I put that up. Let's see, if we head over to the mirror board. Yeah, today's mirror board. Yeah,
Oh,
there
you
we go.
put it
Yeah,
there,
to the
alright,
side of
okay.
yeah, this is a quick mock-up of a card type of thing that I put on there. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that there are a number of problems which can be solved here. Yeah, on a number of levels. So on one hand, we have the requirement, not the requirement, well, the desire to have an onboarding experience which is accessible, kind of, going back to what James was talking about earlier. And I think I'm not sure whether it's Nelson who pointed that out. Yeah, and so my thinking is, if these cards could, represent three different categories, say, or at the moment it's two different categories, where you have actors, right, who are, the folks within Gimbal, because, within this, like, you kind of have to then enter a space where you're defining roles, right? It's like, are you a gimbler? Are you an internal gimbler or an external gimbler, kind of thing? And that kind of, those levels of relationships, which I'm not particularly sure doing that explicitly makes a lot of sense. I think doing it implicitly, where it's, shown with amount of, stake and, the depth of relationship that you have, I think that ought to be what implicitly communicates your relationship as a gimbler, right? So having, two cards, one which is about actors and the other which is about actions. So actions in this case would be the equivalent of tasks or bounties, etc. And yeah, and so you'd have the ability to have the card which has salient information, right? Not going overboard. Salient information, which, as I'm thinking about it, I think makes a lot of sense to be at the moment to be broken down in two sort of formats. One, as you can see above there, is just in sort of sentence form. Again, it's very rough. It's just a sketch, but it will be something equivalent to a sentence form, which can evolve. And then at the bottom would be, hashtags. And again, going back to what James said, from a markdown standpoint, one can be able to sort of communicate this. And one of the reasons why, the hashtag obviously is for searchability, because at the moment, if one turns up, say, to Gimbal, it's difficult to find an individual with particular skill set. Like this is a thing which we've tried. We've had sections on Miro boards where people, we've created templates where you can fill out your information and stuff, but it hasn't been in an environment which has a feedback loop, which someone who's newly arrived can just be on the website, go, to this particular page. I envision it kind of being similar to Apple's, Today at Apple. If you go to apple.com/today, they have this sort of like town square type representation of different events or sort of classes that you can go to locally or virtually. So yeah, imagine someone arriving at Gimbal, going to Today at Gimbal, and being able to tell, okay, do I want to filter all these cards down to just people, right? And and then from people, do I want to see who has a skill set in I don't know, in just skills which are really broadly applicable, right? Because again, here it's not just the ability to be like, hey, I want someone who knows who's familiar with Haskell or like JavaScript or something. It's, hey, is there a plumber, right? Or something, right? Because it's kind of going back to the idea of having a skill set which you can be able, in a way, it's like a resume/CV, where you can be able to contextualize your skill set, and then as problems or as actions in this case, come online, there's a possibility of mapping actions to existing skill sets in a way that's dynamic, where the individual doesn't have to continuously be looking, and those posting stuff don't again have to do a whole bunch of heavy lifting. So that's just my overall thinking. I'm yet to sort of elucidate further on it, and I'll probably change that example, but yeah, you've got actors and actions, and yeah, that's sort of like part of how I've been thinking about it. Hope that makes some sense.
I'm fully on board. I love it. Does anybody else have questions for A? I could start talking right now, but I want to pause for a sec. Yeah, I like the way you framed that. And it reminded me, first of all, thank you so much for spending this meeting like this. This is something that I sat down and thought about maybe doing this alone over the weekend, just this initial sketch, but it feels so much better to be sharing a space and kind of conceiving of this together from the beginning. And I really appreciate everybody spending time this way. But it reminds me, I mean, yes, like part of onboarding is some kind of access to this general instance of GPTE. That is one outcome, but to be clear, there's this other one, which is, some kind of profile, which is what A is talking about here. And so there might be other outcomes of this, but at the very least, I think this branch right here is a nice way to organize our thinking. And one thing that really resonated with me is this, you were essentially talking about emergence when we talk about roles, right? Instead of us getting together right now and saying, hey, here are the named roles that people need at Gimbal, right? That people might fall into these buckets at Gimbal Labs. I think we have an opportunity to maybe never even do that, right? And to let those roles, whatever they might end up being called, emerge from contribution, right? As people express their interests, meet each other, form their own relationships, and yes, contribute to projects, right? Whether it's within the PBL instance of GPTE or this general one, that begins to, that creates your reputation among the community. And at some point, a newcomer might be able to browse, a list of people who have gone through this initial process, right? Filling out that markdown template, hopefully understanding how to update the information on their profile whenever they want to. I think that's I would love to pursue that goal. I'd be really excited to create that process, start experimenting with it. And one question that raises for me that I'd love to get people's thoughts on is, okay, anybody can like read the docs for how to set up your profile like this. What is the decision criteria for whose profile gets posted on the team page of gimballabs.com? Do we just make it completely open, right? Anytime anybody wants to, like they can just add themselves to the team? Or is there some small set of criteria that we can publish as expectations for that? Oh, A, can't hear you.
Mic check, mic check. There we
Oh,
go.
yeah.
I think I'm back
Yeah.
now. Cool. Yeah, I think there's going back to what you said about emergence. I think there's an opportunity here to, tap into history and just relationships and be able to, in a way, have conditionally a weighting, well, different weights of different, I suppose, reputations be verifiable. A similar thing, happens on LinkedIn where you're able to have, like recommendations, right? If you sort of like on LinkedIn, other recommendations, I suppose. Yeah, where someone's able to say, oh, this particular person, this particular skill, yeah, I second that, not only do they have this skill, but XYZ about, give some more context, right? To give weight to the individual's claim to have that particular skill set. I think in this particular, case, if someone says, if I don't know, the word is, obviously, yeah, so from a hierarchical standpoint, like everyone's a contributor, right, within the context of Gimbal. But are you contributing infrastructure, right? So are you like running a dandelion node, right? That can be easily verifiable, and also that can be verifiable in a way in real time, right? So it's like, how long have you done it? Are you still doing it currently? So just dynamic stuff like that, I think, makes sense, that you can create the categories of conditions, of categories of variables, which can then go, that can then feed into the equivalent of, if you want to feature someone, or feature a particular, current action on the homepage, so to speak, sort of like these marketplaces and such tend to do. If you want to feature, sort of, make a particular person, the hero image or whatever, like you're able to dynamically do that in a way that's tied to a relationship, sort of like a graph relationship where, it can be, verifiable, actions, like as I was saying earlier, with running a dandelion node, etc., or running even a stake pool, right? Like, how do you verify that someone's a stake pool operator, kind of thing? Right? You can, state, hey, this is me, is my pool ID, etc., etc. It can be that, but then at the same time, going back to what we spoke about yesterday, where it can't just be sort of computed, it has to also be, we also need the human aspect of it. So, in this case, if I say, I'm good at X, and then say like Roberto and James and Julie can be like, oh yes, A is good at X. That can also, go towards that. Yeah, I hate to use the word testimonials, but or even references don't quite feel like the right word, but I feel like, to answer your question, that's what kind of immediately came to mind, that it can be able to be done in this kind of granular and modular way, which is verifiable and dynamic at the same time.
I agree once again. So first of all, I think this distinction is really helpful. Yuli, thanks for these notes in the chat. And, I think the combination of this verifiable, whether the phrase is what I'm good at or what I can help with, whatever, or your hashtags or whatever, some verifiable part, and then some statement of intention or what I want to learn kind of thing that could be anything. We should welcome that. We should encourage people to share that. Hey, I'm here because this, right? And there's this really cool distinction. This piece to me, this anything, this can be part of the process that we're talking about defining right here, right? People should be able to, if, for example, on a markdown file or a form, whatever it ends up being, add that intention for why they're here. While on the other hand, this verifiable piece, this takes us back to the contribution token. And this is one of the reasons I'm excited to share about some of the one up, one down work, is that's specifically what I've been working on, is really defining these contracts where certain fields of a predefined datum can be updated according to certain rules. And that log, right, whatever shape that data takes, we can play with that together, can support this verification bit. And it might be just a hash. We might decide we don't want to put all of that fine-grained data on chain as inline datum. But just like is being demonstrated in GPTE, we could take the hash of some set of data and throw that on the contrib token, right? And so you can always verify against that. And then the process of establishing that, yes, there's events that can trigger these things. But that's the other part I really agree with, is that I can't help thinking there's always going to have to be some human role, right? Like, for example, with GPTE, we have this sketch of some approval processes, and some of them just require presenting your work to for example, the people in this room, right? We make no claims about how many people have to show up, but present to 3 or 7 or 13 people and get their approval. And we can say, okay, look, there is this human verification element. And in the very same way, as I think about, hey, what is the required amount? Like, if we say that some stuff has to be verified and there's a non-zero amount of whatever that somebody has to share or contribute or validate in some way before they get a profile here, I can't help wondering, just as a thought experiment, I don't know what the answer is, but I'm wondering, like, could it be that the consent process works the very same way here? Hey, somebody comes to this meeting and says, hey, I think I'm ready to be considered a member of the team at gimballabs.com. And we just ask everybody right here, any objections to that? I wonder if that could work. I think it might. Like, if A said, okay, I'm part of the team now, I'd be like, all right, no objection. And what a cool way to build a team, rather than the hierarchical interview process, just being able to say, hey, when you're ready, you're welcome to have a profile here. Let's ask community consent in some way and see if that works. But I don't know if there could be unintended consequences to that approach. And that's what I want to think about.
Yeah. I'll just quickly follow up on that. 2 points. The first is I like the idea of sort of dynamism, the sort of dynamism. There we go. Where, because for one, from a first principle standpoint, I would question, what is the value of being quote unquote a team member, right? Like, as the legal entity becomes formed, like, are you then accepting certain risks / responsibilities, or responsibilities, / risks, Yeah, I'll just in a way, think about it from that standpoint. And in addition, I think being able to dynamically have these things be a thing. Because for example, yeah, I could go from not being a team member to being a team member, and again accepting different responsibilities and risks, to then no longer being one if I no longer meet a specific requirement, right? Because people can just get a thing and then just coast on that without actually actively keeping it up, kind of thing. So yeah, that's just one quick thing. The second one is to Yuli's point. Absolutely, like this is something, and as I said, the sketch that pasted in there is not the best. Like I'll rework and sort of come back and communicate a much more fleshed out version. But you're absolutely right, which is why I defined actions or actors and actions, right, being separate things, where the act is defined by, in this case, the skill set, and then the action is what they're interested in. And to add on to to Yuli's last point there, what do I want to learn? Part of my copy was, before I gave it some thought and sort of evolved or iterated past it, was I wrote, I want to learn how I can blah 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 blah, how I can figure out how to get composable, a composable implementation of what I'm working on, right? Whether it's in the context of emojis.id or my tax my vote, etc., any of the different projects I'm working on. And I realized, in a way, framing it as I want to learn had some other, in my opinion, this might not hold for everyone else, but it had some other, I suppose, implications or assumptions of passivity and expecting activity from someone else, right? Like I'm looking to learn, so someone else teach me, right? As opposed to like I'm here already doing stuff, and like I'm looking to like learn, how to develop, this particular idea. So yeah, again, it might just be semantics, but to me, in a way, taking that away and just framing it as, hey, here is a summation or tiny subset of my skill sets at a high level. I mean, it would be difficult to have hashtag all my skills kind of thing. But maybe over time, that then becomes a thing, because then yeah, because we can get to a point where, from a graph representation standpoint, we can be able to have that query, like stuff which is a superset, or stuff which is a subset of a superset, stuff within, say, architecture, like structural engineering, for example, or something, right? Instead of having to put all of those in there, you can just be able to over time be able to query something like that. So yeah, anyway, to long story short, having the ability to just have like the actor be defined by, in a way, what their skill sets are, and then the different actions, obviously in this case tied to an actor. In my case, it would be, say, for example, around emojis.id. That would be an action in itself, because there are actionable things around that, like, okay, folks who have some experience in Swift, for example, right? Swift is a big thing in my current stack. And so for my tax my vote, it might have to do with uh civil engagement, right? Because diplomacy is something which I'm really thinking about, and sort of like branching that out. Even languages, right? If you speak a different language, like I want to engage with you, right? Because understanding that will help this particular project or idea or action in a way that grows in different ways. So like from an internationalization standpoint, being able to say, hey, I contributed to that project, but not only did I contribute to that project, I contributed to a fundamental primitive, right? I translated, what authenticated transaction is in my language, right? And that then gets used so many times, right? Just stuff like that, yeah. Anyway, separation of action. I just wanted to come back and highlight that is part of my thinking, which I shall expand on.
Excellent. So, but this is a really cool. One of the reasons I'm excited about this kind of focused project right here is that it feels like a chance to kind of level up how we distinguish between those different lines of thinking. And so with the high level categories of actors and actions, I think this is a really good starting place for thinking about this onboarding process. It seems like we're aligned that, the goal is some kind of shareability and discoverability about what people are interested in and why they're here, what they want to learn. Some kind of process of we want people to be able to name what they're good at and also verify that. And so an outcome of this work is to have this pipeline, and I like this concept, A calls it a feedback loop here, of people being able to share some part of themselves, now be part of this directory, whatever it's called, and potentially a subset of that directory. It might be the whole thing is the team, right? It might be that there's like a toggle to move from just like the general directory to being on the team page. But like, I feel like we're setting ourselves up to do that. That moment of toggle, to the extent possible, ought to come from the agent themselves, not from the organization. But there does need to be some kind of verification along the way. That feels like enough alignment to move towards a next steps conversation right here. So I would propose for this meeting, just spending now a little bit of time just thinking about this other part of things, this actions bit. And what I'm enjoying about mapping this out is we kind of see these connective nodes. And the contribution token is gonna serve in both parts, right? So what does it mean to be onboarded to Gimbal Labs? Well, there's two things that can happen. I feel pretty confident will happen. You'll create some kind of profile, right? Some kind of record of what we've been talking about, and a contribution token will be minted. And maybe at minting time, it's empty of data, but I think we can move forward with the user and reference pairs that have been piloted in GPTE. I think this gives us a really exciting chance to continue playing with that structure. And it gives us kind of an empty spot, right? That datum can just be filled in whatever way we decide we want to, with whatever we decide we want to verify and track. But the policy ID itself will then feed access to this general GPTE, which comes with all of the concerns that the current instance has. For example, a decision-making process for what projects get listed there, right? All of this connects. But step one is just to kind of, for me, this is kind of the fun part I'm excited to do together, is to design the simple instance of this thing. So I know Nelson has already been playing around with some designs. We talked yesterday about you doing a couple of minutes share about what you've been working on. Would you be interested right now in just taking us through how you've been thinking about the template?
Yeah, I can show you guys something there.
Excellent. I'll unshare.
I was hoping I could work more on it, but I got hooked up with something else too. So I'm in this start.
That's just a condition of our humanity right now.
Okay, you can see this, right?
Yes, looks good.
Okay. So what I was thinking was, I imagined it to be a place where somebody can just come in and see the list of the projects listed there, the tasks, just focus on it and being able to commit to it. So what I mean by that is I just wanted it to be the bare minimum of what it can be. See, we love, at least I love choices, I love options, and diversity, right? So what I thought was we have a lot of technicalities with the one we have right now, and I just want the other one to be the bare minimum as it can, like the bare minimum as it goes. So, and also I want it to be just from the front end standpoint, I want it to be drastically different. I just want to set the spectrum, range wide, so people can imagine things in between. And I'm pretty sure that we're not going to set the limit for the spectrum when people are going to start instantiating more instances of GPT. They're going to widen the range. So this is just I wanted to work on this a bit more, but this is a 3-page thing. So I just tried, and I have to say, you can see that clearly I'm not a front-end dev. I've been playing around with JavaScript from just 3 months or 4 months back. So, so first of all, dashboard. So I was trying to clear out what we have in the GPT we have now and what we don't need here, and just pick up on what we can have. So these things, these are going to be opinionated stuff, opinionated topics. So if we're going to do this, I wanted to get some feedback from you guys and decide on how we can do it. So the treasury details, like does someone who want to come in and commit to a project need to see this? And I thought not, maybe so much. So, but when someone comes to the GPT website, this minimal GPT, and they just want to know what it is about. So we can have a little bit of description of what this is all about. And then the idea is to contribute, right? So how to become a contributor, we can have some things on that. FAQs, we can have FAQs, right? I already have a lot of FAQs, like I don't know, frequently questions comes popping up. So, and then context, right? So this is a dashboard I designed. The thing I envisioned it to be later on. And the project page. So, like again, this is just a simple table, and it can be many things, right? We have the project card system now, and this is how I thought firsthand. People can suggest how we can move on. So I was just playing around. I haven't done quite yet, and I thought we can have a filter button here, and this isn't working yet. It's just a dummy button. This is also the new button, and we can have a project page, right? We need a project page, and where we can commit to that. So it's just a simple design. There's a table. I fetched the projects from the previous GPT report, and so yeah, you come in. We have how to become a contributor part. You switch to projects. You find projects. You go to each project page. You find the details, and then you commit to it. And the last thing I thought that was needed was a history. There's a history, whatever the active list, completed list. And something I even thought was when someone connects to their wallet, if they have a contributor token, they can see your contributions here, and it can pop up what his contributions are. Yeah, we can have that here, or you can even have the dashboard or something. And we also have to design. I'm not sure for now, but later on, like we have to design for the part where someone holds the issuer token, right? Distribution and all. So this is the bare minimum that I have thought about, and yeah, I have nothing else to share for now. So, uh, when A and you guys were talking about, maybe I want to digress for a little bit. I was thinking a lot of things went in my head. Maybe we can even have, imagine if someone, so let's say if someone comes in and doesn't even want to associate with Gimbal Labs, but he finds something exciting, uh, some project like being out there, and if he wants to commit to it, then I was thinking along the lines of a quick pass token. So uh, just this is something we can have in the future, but it just popped into my mind. It feels fun. So we can have a contract where one can mint himself, and it will cost some amount of money, I guess, for that thing he's interested in, right? So if someone comes in and say, "Oh, this seems fun. I want to commit to this and just move on with life. I don't want to hang in here anymore." So he comes in, let's say he mints a quick pass token, he commits to one thing, and he gets the rewards, and the quick pass token gets burned. Maybe even we can have a system, right? It was just it just popped into my mind. Uh, so I guess that's all I have to share. I have to share. Oh, okay. One more thing was a lot of things have been abstracted here, and the other thing that I'm excited about was thinking along the lines of this GPTE Explorer, right? So all the things we have here, like even this dashboard, I even thought like why have it here, because uh people I don't know. Yeah, I'm thinking if people might feel bad that they're not contributing to anything, like, we don't even need this. But it's not like we're hiding anything from anyone. So I think all of this can be summed up in something of a GPT Explorer. And that connects to when James talked about this faucet, right? I think we can even work on every GPT instance that come up to automatically show up in this GPT Explorer that I'm talking about. Or maybe we can have a registration as we have for the faucet type. We can decide on that later on. But the idea is that if we have a place like the GPT Explorer, then we can compare notes to what are the different things. One of the things that's going to be drastically different is the contributor tokens, right? So we're I'm so happy to see that these things are not going to be there in the general contributor token end, right? So a GPTE Explorer can be a place where we can compare notes, and people can come in and see that these are the types of contributor tokens that exist out there. These are the types of contribution that people have made, and I can filter out if I want to let someone work on something, compare notes. So it inspired this page, and when Jim explained it last week, I got excited and thought along the lines of GPT Explorer. Maybe I have to articulate that a little bit more formally, and I can try on it. But yeah, that is one idea I would like to build on once we have this instance of GPT up and running. So, thanks, Dan.
Fabulous, man. Thank you. I tried to take some of the notes on the board. I didn't capture everything. This is a great place to start. And thanks for those ideas. Aris, what do you think?
Yeah, hey, as I've been listening, I've had some questions. I'll add them to the board also. But one of my thoughts was, as someone who comes newly to the project, when I go to the Gimbal Labs website, I'm curious to know what is Gimbal Labs, like? Where does that name come from? like to get a background story, that'd be cool. So maybe now is not the time to get into that, but that would be a nice intro. And then to me, it seems also like this is kind of like a job board in the making for Cardano developers who have completed the PPBL. So I'm wondering, is it also open for more developers to contribute as there are more projects coming along? Should I just shoot out these questions, or do you want to answer them like one at a time, or what's better for you guys?
Whatever's best for you. Yeah, you call it.
Okay. I just have a few more thoughts that I'm super happy to share and discuss. I'm wondering also, how scalable do you want to see this project? Like, how many developers are you looking to see within the next course, within the next year? And then also, like, what are your plans on getting new candidates and marketing and letting them know about this project? Like, for me, I found out this project about Gimbal Labs. I happened to be listening to a Twitter space through Emergo, and I was about to pick up my kids and everything, but I really wanted to get more involved with becoming a Cardano blockchain developer. So I asked a question, and I was pointed towards you guys. So that's how I found out about it. But I'm curious also to know how other people have found out about Gimbal Labs. And yeah, those are my thoughts for now. Thanks.
Julie
so
has been
there's-
working on
so-
go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I'm just going to stop sharing so you can show the new report.
Oh, right on. Great. Yeah, Julie has been working on some, like some decks about what we do. And we realized that, hey, we're probably way past time to start collecting some more formal testimonials. So definitely looking to get more stories about why people are here and what the benefits have been. I agree with the need for a little more storytelling about what Gimbal Labs is, why it's called that, on the homepage of gimballabs.com. And that's a great example, that speaks to the need for getting this general instance up and running so people can take on little projects like that. The short version, a gimbal is a balancing device used in navigation inside of gyroscopes, and it was mathematically specified by Girolamo Cardano. So that's our kind of connection to the Cardano ecosystem and namespace. We're pretty excited to be talking about balance, but also have that connection to the chain itself. And then the middle question, bring me back.
If it's open for more developers to contribute, or is it only
right.
for PPBL?
Yeah, okay. So yeah, the general architecture here, this is, and I'm excited for you to really jump in if you have time to take the PPBL course itself, even the one that currently exists, because so many of these concepts are laid out in that course, right? And they're like, I can give you the short version now, but I'm excited for you to get your hands on it and really start to kind of see these patterns. But the current plan is not for GPTE to be built in a way that it becomes the monolithic job board. Okay. In a lot of ways, we could compare this architecture that we're building to something like Gitcoin on Ethereum. And at least if I have my way, right, I might be pushed out of the way and people might take this a totally different direction. And if that happened, I would be thrilled. That would feel like a success case. But my intention is not to build Gitcoin on Cardano, but to help establish a new way of apps interacting. And so Nelson called up on his screen the Faucet project that we cover in the PBL course, which is the first time this concept is introduced. The general idea is that you can write a smart contract once, you can compile it with different variables any number of times, and then each instance of that application can run independently with opt-in opportunities for other people to be part of that network. So yeah, we've got one GPTE up here right now. This is the first one. Today at this meeting, we're talking about building a second instance of it just for Gimbal Labs to get kind of admin work done, right? All the organizational work done that offers lots of people different opportunities to contribute. Mesh is building their own instance of a GPTE that's going to have its own treasury, be run by that team, right? With their funds and their own projects, right? Independent. Now, eventually, when there are, when there's many instances of this thing running, you can still create front ends that collect all of this information. Okay. You can still have a single website. And this is what's brilliant about what Nelson is talking about in terms of a GPTE explorer, right? What are the different GPTEs out there? Who's administering each one? What are the contribution tokens accepted at each one? And those things can be dynamic over time. So we're trying to create this network of independently operating instances of this application. And I'm not aware of experiments quite at this scale, right? It's very exciting to be kind of pushing what's possible. But also that means that even the language we use to talk about scaling is going to be tweaked a little bit in order for us to be able to talk about this project. How much sense did that short version of things make?
I think I got a good amount, but there's definitely some things that I'll just have to kind of complement as I go and immerse myself more in the PPBL. But I was thinking also regarding the next round, like how many people are you guys trying to get to join? Because I see myself as one of those candidates. Like I've kind of been learning on my own, but I'm going to immerse myself more and go deeper. So I'm wondering, like, I happened to stumble across this, but I'm wondering what you guys are doing to kind of get more recruits and like serious candidates and things like that.
Right on. There's a lot of different partnerships right now. I'm not going to elucidate all of those right now, but I think we'll share more about that. But it speaks to this really interesting dynamic, right? We've kind of one of the reasons it's been slow to build a team here is that we didn't start by seeking a bunch of investment so that we'd have the budget to pay a bunch of people to have jobs at Gimbal Labs. Instead, we emphasized having autonomy. And right now, right, we're in a bootstrapping phase. There's not a lot of income. And there's certainly not like jobs. Like I don't even have a salary yet. I do a little consulting work where I can, right? Now, eventually, will there be the ability to support salaried positions? Maybe we get there, right? I hope we do for my own sake, but also it would be really fabulous to have a team where we all knew we were taken care of. Getting to that point will be really exciting. The reason I'm sharing that part first is that this impacts the way we think about success metrics, right? If we were beholden to an investor, they would have certain expectations for A, how many people enroll in PPBL, and B, what proportion of those people get through the course. If we were working in a state education agency, like I did for most of my career, right? Your number one target is just to make sure that this many human bodies are in the classroom every day. You focus on attendance first. And then once those children are in the classroom, you focus on how many of them you can get to pass a certain test by filling in a certain number of multiple choice bubbles correctly, right? We are beholden to none of that. So we could set a number. How many people do we want to sign up for the next iteration of Plutus PBL? Like, you could ask anybody that question and you could get different answers. There's not a formal KPI that we're chasing because we don't have to, right? If it's more than this time, I'd be excited, So, the first iteration of Plutus PBL, like 18 people showed up and one finished. this iteration of Plutus PBL, we're closing in on 400 people signed up for it. And so far, you can see how many contribution tokens have been minted so far. Where are we at? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 out of almost 400, right? If these people out of those 400 keep working through and we get a few more of those over the line, great. And if next iteration of the course, I don't know, more than 400 people sign up, I'll be happy enough. But here's what gets really exciting. 9 out of 400. If I was a teacher in a school where 9 out of 400 people were passing the courses, that would be an epic failure. Right? But if we tweak the way we're thinking about it, right? This is an opportunity that's open to everybody. There's no single individual making like hiring decisions for an organization, but what the PBL into GPTE pipeline accomplishes is it essentially serves as the onboarding process for contributors. And so if you reframe how we think about this pipeline, yes, it's providing free education and it's serving as a team building apparatus, right? Sifting through 400 candidates and finding the 9 who really want to be there is an epic success, right? So it's just a matter of how we really conceive of these tools. I would love to, A and I early on, we talked about how someday Gimbal Labs will have a board of directors. It doesn't have that yet. Should it? I don't know, right? Like what are they governing? So we have to get to that point. And once there is a board of directors, if they want to define those success metrics, right? And then people doing the work can use that to frame success. Let's try to get there. But I just want you to have that background for why it's not urgent right now for anybody other than ourselves to say, okay, here's loosely how we can define success.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. I think that really clarifies like how you guys see this project and
Cool.
For now. So.
Yeah, man. Thanks for asking. Hey, what do you think? Not getting sound. Son of a.
Was it back? Yeah, there we go.
Yep.
Yeah, I think we had it too good previously. That it's like, yeah, no, now I'm gonna screw you over every chance I get. Yeah, I remember that conversation. Yeah, thinking about looking at the analog. Oh man, okay, we're now into next best steps, but I'll quickly try and make my point. Yeah, so the point which I wanted to make actually goes back to a point which James has made and which Nelson made. I am of the opinion that the equivalent of leaderboards are actually quite important, but how you implement them, right? Right now, the way from a user experience standpoint, metrics are enforced upon people. Imagine if you could flip that around, where again, going back to the dynamism of being able to have this metadata, which you can say, hey, like show me within the community where I fall, right? And this is important because it helps people to be able to know, okay, what dimension do I want to improve in, right? Because otherwise, if you top down enforce a particular metric, what then ends up happening is, you're having a mason compare themselves to a florist, and it just doesn't make sense. Or like, any other incongruous human, unique human skill set and interest, right? So I think enabling it to be dynamic in that way makes a lot more sense, and there is value to the idea of a leaderboard, because once you have that context and people are able to kind of one, get a sense of progress, and get and set north stars that they can gradually work towards in whichever dimension they choose to. or they're informed to.
It's so interesting. Yeah, you know, like I think it'll be, I'm excited to explore what is the right amount to have on some kind of public leaderboard like this. There are definitely more wrong ways to implement a leaderboard than I think right ways. Because, you know, always unintended consequences, right? The moment you gamify something, the moment you quantify something, that thing that you were trying to incentivize, the nature of it changes. There's just no doubt about it. While on the same token, you know, people with a number of contributions in this column, I want them to be damn proud of what they accomplished, right? So like that, like a leaderboard ought to make people feel proud and connected for what they've done, but it also shouldn't make people lose sleep. Oh, I got to be at the top of that leaderboard, right? So let's think about how to get that right. And the wrinkle that's added here is that this is all Plutus accessible data, right? So whatever the leaderboard says, whatever we present of on-chain data, the other thing that happens is anyone else who comes along and wants to mint another contributor token. That's why I'm going to be thinking about this. So it's like this idea of the GPT Explorer, Nelson, genius. I'm so excited to think about that with you. But the concept here is that anybody seeking a team can come along and say, all right, I can programmatically mint new contrib tokens for people who have this evidence in some other contrib token, right? This record of contribution elsewhere is now validator verifiable, which is incredibly exciting to me. All right, so with these high level ideas in mind, that was a lot of work for 85 minutes. Not bad, everybody. But let's move to next most elegant steps. Nelson, I think I feel alignment with you in kind of your spirit of learning chakra as you go and plugging things in together and producing a design. But speaking for myself, I love doing that. I love sketching in code, but I'm not a designer. I've never really worked with somebody I trust to actually just make a design and then go implement it. So, this is what I wanted to just ask you if you wanted to, like sharing some wireframes for what you might think would build a beautiful GPTE instance, or if anybody else here is a designer and not a developer, I think it would be really cool to have anybody kind of sketch up what this beautiful minimal GPTE might look like. And Nelson, what's fun about that is if you're not trying to do two things at once, right? Like conceive of the design and learn chakra, having a design provided by somebody else and then going to implement it is a great experience. So, you know, just want to open the door to that, and I'll put out a call to action in the community too. But anybody who, you know, if you have a concept in your head, here's how we could make this thing look beautiful. Please don't be shy. Okay, it would be really fun to get kind of a cohesive thing. And the lighter weight version of what I'm requesting right now is anybody who just looks at another website. You say, oh, maybe we could make a GPTE instance that looks like, you know, whatever.com. Please feel free to drop those links in Discord and we can look at that and just mine that for ideas. Okay. Because yeah, it would be cool for this thing to be like slick and slightly better meet people's expectations for what an application might look like. That's one next step that I'll be looking for. And I'll put out a call to action about that. But in just the couple of minutes that remain, if you do still have Miro board open, feel free to drop your name in any region of this map right here where you'd like to be involved in the weeks to come. Okay, this is going to be a parallel mini project that runs alongside building up the new PBL course. It absolutely connects to, you know, moving towards building the LMS more generally. It connects, like I mentioned, to contrib tokens. Maybe I can present on these next week, but just drop your name here. And if you don't have Miro open and you want me to drop your name somewhere on this chart, you can just speak up right now. And if you want to unmute for any reason to talk about what you'll be thinking about coming out of this meeting, floor is open. Thanks, Nelson.
Can I just ask, tomorrow at the same time, we just continue with this process?
So tomorrow, it's kind of a parallel process. And it's interesting you asked that, because the idea for what we're talking about today came out of our Thursday live coding session last week. And what we're focusing on Thursdays is defining this list of projects right here. Okay. It's more of a live working session where I'll give you kind of some entry points to dig into this list, and then anybody is welcome to just speak up when they have questions. But also it's kind of a beautiful just co-working session where there's moments of focus and silence, just of people looking at things together. The reason we're doing that is there's also a governance vector to this whole thing. Okay, so yeah, I shared the vision for how there's going to be many instances of GPTEs running independently. Each one is going to have a treasury with some tokens in it that can be distributed as things get done. It's going to have a list of projects. Well, who decides what's on this list of projects that are being funded by this treasury? That's a governance question. And this is a fine-tuned, like on-the-ground governance question. I've compared it a couple times. Like if you think of Project Catalyst as like a federal government or a United Nations, what the kind of governance we're talking about right here is more like City Hall, right? Coming together for those meetings where people talk about, hey, what's the budget for trash collection this year? That kind of thing is really what we're pioneering here. Fine-tuned, what projects do we list and for what rewards on this page. So I'm really excited for us to be like building up a governance apparatus like that together. That's the main work on Thursdays. But we can also, if people have thoughts about this, we can reserve a few minutes just to connect on these concepts, because like I said, this whole idea came out of that GPTE governance meeting last week.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, man. All right. We are 1 minute over time. I missed my goal of ending right on the moment, but anybody got any last questions before we close out? I'm grateful for all of you. It's nice to do this kind of fine-tuned project planning with you, and I really appreciate it. All right, well, I'll follow up. This video is recorded, so I'll share the link and my understanding of the next steps in Discord later today. See y'all tomorrow.